I walked through my front door with news no one wants to hear. Terminal pancreatic cancer, 8 to 12 months left. The silent house felt like a tomb already. All I wanted was to see my wife Amanda, to hold her while I processed this devastating diagnosis. Instead, I found her naked in our bed with Jake, my best friend since college. The world collapsed twice in one day. Their excuses meant nothing as they scrambled for clothes and dignity they no longer deserved. In that moment, something hardened inside me. Before I tell you how I dismantled the life my wife built on lies, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe to follow my journey of reclaiming dignity in my final months. I had built what I thought was a perfect life with Amanda. 10 years of marriage, a beautiful colonial home in a Boston suburb, and careers we were both proud of. I worked as a financial consultant at Meridian Financial Advisors, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. Amanda sold luxury real estate at Pinnacle Properties, where she had risen to become one of their top agents. We traveled, we entertained, we talked about starting a family soon. At 35, I thought I had decades ahead to accomplish everything I wanted. Jake had been part of our lives since college. He stood as my best man, gave the most emotional toast about everlasting friendship and love. He became godfather to my nephew Troy when my sister Lauren had her son. We spent holidays, weekends, and countless dinner parties together. I trusted him completely, which made his betrayal cut even deeper. The symptoms had started subtly. Fatigue I attributed to working 60-hour weeks. Back pain I blamed on my office chair. Digestive issues I thought came from too many client dinners. When the yellowing of my skin could no longer be ignored, I finally made an appointment. Even then, I expected something manageable, something that could be fixed with medication or minor surgery. The doctor was kind, compassionate, even as she delivered the news that would end everything I thought I knew about my life. Stage 4. Pancreatic cancer already spread to my liver. The statistics were grim, 8 to 12 months with treatment. My brain struggled to process what she was saying, as she discussed treatment options, palliative care, getting my affairs in order. I sat in my car for 30 minutes in the hospital parking lot, unable to drive, unable to think clearly. The world outside continued normally, people walking, talking, living their lives, while mine had just been assigned an expiration date. I called my office, told them I would be taking a few days off. Family emergency, I said, not ready to explain the full truth. The drive home was surreal. I passed places I had been hundreds of times, the coffee shop where Amanda and I had our first date, the park where we walked our dog before he died last year, the high school where we had talked about sending our future children. Everything looked the same but felt fundamentally different, as if the world had shifted slightly off its axis. I pulled into our driveway at 2:14 p.m., a time forever etched in my memory. Amanda's car was there, which was unusual for a Tuesday afternoon. She typically showed properties or held open houses until evening on weekdays. A small mercy, I thought. At least I would not have to wait to share this burden. The house was quiet when I entered. I called out for Amanda, but received no response. Thinking she might be on a work call in her home office, I headed upstairs to change into more comfortable clothes before having the most difficult conversation of our marriage. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, unusual, since Amanda always closed it when she made the bed each morning. I heard sounds before I saw them: muffled laughter, the rhythmic creak of our bed, whispered words I could not quite make out. My body knew what was happening before my mind would accept it. I pushed the door open to find my wife straddling Jake in our bed. Their naked bodies were intertwined on the same sheets where I had held Amanda just that morning, telling her I was nervous about my doctor appointment. They did not notice me, immediately lost in their betrayal. I stood frozen, watching my life crumble for the second time that day. When Amanda finally saw me, her expression shifted from passion to shock to something like annoyed inconvenience. Not guilt, not shame. Annoyance at being caught. Jake scrambled to cover himself, mumbling incoherent excuses and apologies that meant nothing. "I have no illness," Amanda said after the initial shock wore off. "Why are you even home?" Her coldness stunned me more than the infidelity itself. When I told them my diagnosis using the clinical terms the doctor had used, as if that would somehow make it less real, I saw calculation rather than compassion in Amanda's eyes. Jake pulled on his pants, suddenly eager to leave. "You need to focus on your health, man," he said, as if offering useful advice rather than fleeing the scene of his betrayal. Amanda remained silent, watching me with an expression I could not read. When they both began speaking at once, offering justifications and minimizations, I simply turned and walked out of my own home. I checked into a hotel downtown, a place where Amanda and I had once spent our 5th anniversary. The irony was not lost on me. That night was the darkest of my life. I contemplated ending things on my own terms, not waiting for the cancer to take me. I drank half a bottle of whiskey from the minibar and stood at the window of my room looking down at the city streets 17 floors below. But as the night progressed and the initial shock began to fade, another emotion took hold. Determination. If I had limited time left, I would not spend it as a victim. I would not let Amanda and Jake escape the consequences of their actions. By morning, I had a plan. I would use every skill I had developed in my financial career, every connection I had made, and every ounce of strength I had left to ensure that justice was served. My life was ending, but I would make sure that the life Amanda and Jake thought they would enjoy together would never materialize. With daylight came clarity and purpose. As a financial consultant who had helped wealthy clients protect and grow their assets for years, I understood money trails better than most. I knew that knowledge would be my greatest weapon against Amanda and Jake. My first step was to secure professional allies. I researched the top divorce attorneys in Boston and scheduled a consultation with Lisa Watkins, known for her aggressive approach and impressive record against cheating spouses. Her reputation for leaving unfaithful partners with nothing but regret made her perfect for my situation. When I explained my circumstances, the terminal diagnosis, the discovery of my wife with my best friend, and my desire to ensure Amanda would not profit from my death, she took my case immediately, waiving her usual retainer. "We will make sure your wife regrets the day she betrayed you, Ernest," she promised. "No judge will look kindly on a woman who cheats on her dying husband. The courts do still have some sense of decency left." With legal representation secured, I began my financial investigation. Amanda and I had joint accounts, investment portfolios, and property holdings that would need to be untangled. I had always handled our major financial decisions, but Amanda had insisted on maintaining some separate accounts for her real estate commission income. I had never questioned this arrangement, trusting her completely. That trust had been misplaced. Working methodically through our financial history, I discovered disturbing patterns. For at least 3 years, Amanda had been transferring significant amounts from our joint savings into her personal accounts. The timing aligned perfectly with the likely beginning of her affair with Jake. She had been preparing her escape long before my diagnosis. Even more shocking was finding that Jake, who worked at Sentinel Financial, a competitor to my firm, had been advising her on these moves. His financial fingerprints were all over her investment choices, ones that protected her assets while leaving our joint holdings vulnerable. They had not just betrayed me emotionally, they had been systematically betraying me financially for years. While conducting this financial archaeology, I also began my cancer treatment. The diagnosis was confirmed by 2 additional specialists, both recommending an aggressive approach that might extend my life slightly, but would not change the ultimate outcome. I started chemotherapy, experiencing all the brutal side effects the doctors had warned about: nausea, fatigue, hair loss. The medical staff at Boston Memorial became unexpected allies. My oncologist doctor, Sarah Patel, went beyond professional care to offer genuine compassion. The nurses in the chemotherapy ward treated me with kindness that sometimes brought me to tears. Their humanity stood in stark contrast to Amanda's cruelty. I told Dr. Patel about my situation, including the betrayal. She connected me with a hospital social worker and a cancer support group specifically for patients dealing with relationship challenges during treatment. Through these connections, I learned I was far from alone. The statistics were sobering: approximately 20% of cancer patients experienced abandonment by spouses following diagnosis. While building my support network at the hospital, I also began gathering intelligence from Amanda's social circle. I approached her friends carefully, presenting myself as the heartbroken husband, trying to understand what had happened. Their sympathy for my medical condition loosened lips. I learned the affair had indeed been ongoing for 3 years, that several of her friends knew about it, and that Amanda and Jake had been planning a future together while waiting for an appropriate time to leave me. What no one could have anticipated was that I would receive a terminal diagnosis, complicating their neat exit strategy. Now, instead of leaving me, they stood to benefit financially from my death if they maintained the facade of a caring wife and supportive friend. The life insurance policy I had taken out years ago named Amanda, as the primary beneficiary to the tune of $2 million. As these revelations accumulated, I executed the next phase of my plan. I quietly liquidated certain assets that were solely in my name, establishing a trust for my nephew Troy's college education. I documented every financial transaction Amanda had hidden, creating a paper trail that would be devastating in divorce proceedings. To set my trap, I projected an image of defeat and vulnerability. When Amanda finally returned home 3 days after I caught her, I pretended to be willing to work through the betrayal for the sake of facing my illness with support. I talked about wanting peace in my final months, about forgiveness and understanding. She performed her role perfectly, feigning remorse and dedication, all while continuing to communicate with Jake behind my back, thanks to the spyware I had installed on her phone. The social chess game required equal precision. I carefully shared partial truths with close friends and family members, expressing confusion about Amanda's distant behavior during my health crisis without explicitly mentioning the infidelity. This created space for Amanda and Jake to believe they were controlling the narrative. Meanwhile, I recorded every conversation with Amanda, documenting her admissions and contradictions. In Massachusetts, only one party needs to consent to recording, making these recordings completely legal and admissible. On tape, I captured Amanda discussing their plans, her resentment of caring for a sick husband, and her eagerness to move on with Jake once I was gone. As Amanda grew more confident in her deception, she became careless. She left evidence of their ongoing relationship in text messages, emails, and even credit card statements, showing hotel charges when she claimed to be showing properties. Each piece of evidence was carefully preserved and shared with my attorney. My support network grew while Amanda unwittingly sabotaged her own. Her performance as the devoted wife slipped frequently, with friends noticing her checking messages from Jake during my chemotherapy appointments or complaining about the burden of my care to her real estate colleagues. By pretending to be oblivious, I allowed her to reveal her true character to everyone around us. By the end of 3 months, I had everything I needed to proceed with the final phases of my plan: complete financial documentation, irrefutable evidence of infidelity, and a strategic advantage Amanda and Jake did not even realize existed. They thought they were waiting for my death while enjoying their relationship in secret. They did not understand that I was methodically dismantling the future they planned to build on the ashes of my life. The timing of my divorce filing was carefully calculated for maximum impact. I waited until Amanda had just landed a listing for a $7 million property in Beacon Hill, her most prestigious opportunity to date. The commission would have set her up financially for months. The day before the listing presentation, she was served divorce papers at her office, creating a spectacle that immediately damaged her professional reputation. The comprehensive evidence package attached to the filing left no room for denial or defense. My attorney had compiled everything from financial records showing her systematic theft from our joint accounts to text messages detailing her affair with Jake to recordings of her discussing how my death would benefit her financially. The filing also included testimony from her colleagues and friends who had witnessed her continued relationship with Jake during my treatment. Amanda's response was panic, then rage, then desperate negotiation. She tried to portray herself as a victim who had made a mistake, but genuinely cared for me. This performance fell apart when confronted with her own words from the recordings. Her attorney, a young associate clearly outmatched by Lisa Watkins, advised her to settle quickly before more damage was done. Jake's response was even more predictable. He disappeared. When Amanda frantically called him after being served, he did not answer. When she went to his apartment, he was not there. His sudden unavailability spoke volumes about the depth of his commitment to her. He had enjoyed the affair when it was convenient and exciting, but he had no interest in facing its consequences. What neither of them knew was that Jake had bigger problems coming. During my financial investigation, I had discovered irregularities in his client accounts at Sentinel Financial. Nothing concrete enough for legal action, but sufficient to warrant scrutiny. An anonymous tip to both his firm compliance department and the Securities and Exchange Commission triggered an audit of his accounts. The professional consequences unfolded rapidly. Amanda's luxury real estate business relied heavily on her reputation and network. News of her affair with a client husband during his cancer treatment spread quickly through Boston high society, her primary customer base. Listings were pulled. Referrals dried up. Her broker called to express concerns about her representing the agency. Meanwhile, the audit at Sentinel Financial revealed Jake had been engaging in practices that bordered on embezzlement, moving client funds temporarily to accounts he controlled before returning them with the investment gains recorded, but skimming percentages that were small enough to go unnoticed individually, but substantial in aggregate. The firm placed him on administrative leave, pending investigation, effectively ending his financial career in Boston. Amanda attempts to portray herself as the grieving future widow fell apart as our divorce proceedings became public knowledge. Her social media posts about supporting me through my cancer journey, which had garnered sympathy and admiration, were now seen as manipulative and false. Former friends commented with disgust, sharing their own observations of her ongoing affair. The social fallout reached its peak at Thanksgiving. My sister Lauren hosted the family gathering, including our parents and several cousins. Amanda, still trying to maintain appearances, arrived with a casserole and practiced sympathy expression. She did not know that I had already shared the complete truth with my family. The cold reception surprised her, but she continued her performance until my father, normally a reserved man, asked her directly how long she had been sleeping with Jake while his son was dying. The silence that followed was deafening. When she attempted to minimize and justify, my mother quietly placed copies of text messages between Amanda and Jake on the dinner table messages Lauren had helped me compile from the evidence. That same weekend, Jake experienced his own social reckoning. His fiancée, yes, he had been engaged to another woman while carrying on with my wife, discovered the full extent of his betrayal. She arrived at his apartment while he was packing to leave town and created a scene that neighbors recorded and shared widely. His duplicity was now completely public, his reputation destroyed in both professional and personal circles. The final confrontation occurred in December, 4 months after my diagnosis, in my attorney office. Amanda arrived expecting a negotiation about division of assets. Instead, she found me waiting with printouts of life insurance policies I had changed to name Cancer Research Foundations as beneficiaries, documentation of the trust I had established for my nephew, education, and complete records of her financial misconduct. I watched as she realized everything she had planned had disintegrated. She had expected to emerge from my death with wealth, property, and freedom to build a new life with Jake. Instead, she was facing professional ruin, social ostracism, and financial consequences that would take years to overcome. The moment her composure cracked and genuine emotion finally broke through was not satisfaction or triumph for me, but confirmation that justice had been served. When she began to cry, claiming she had made a terrible mistake and still loved me, I simply slid a final document across the table, the property deed for our home, which I had transferred solely to my name based on evidence of her financial misconduct. She would need to vacate within 30 days. The house would be sold with proceeds going to pancreatic cancer research. "You took everything from me when I was at my most vulnerable," I told her calmly. "I am simply ensuring you cannot profit from my death after wishing for it so openly. Perhaps in your next relationship you will learn that loyalty matters more than convenience." With the legal battles largely behind me, I shifted my focus to my treatment and making the most of whatever time I had left. The aggressive chemotherapy regimen was brutal, but I approached it with the same determination that had fueled my quest for justice. Dr. Patel had identified me as a potential candidate for an experimental immunotherapy treatment being tested at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and I enrolled in the clinical trial without hesitation. During my hospital stays, I developed an unexpected friendship with Sophia, a nurse in the oncology department. Unlike those who treated me with kid gloves because of my diagnosis, Sophia spoke to me with refreshing honesty. She had lost her husband to cancer 5 years earlier, and understood both the patient and caregiver perspectives in ways few others could. Our friendship gave me something I had been missing: genuine human connection without agenda or pretense. We began meeting for coffee after my treatments, talking about everything from philosophy to travel destinations. When my energy allowed, we explored Boston, visiting museums and parks I had always taken for granted. She helped me create a bucket list that was actually achievable within my medical constraints. With Sophia's encouragement, I used some of my remaining savings to travel, seeing places I had always intended to visit someday. When I had more time, that elusive future moment that would now never arrive. I walked along the rim of the Grand Canyon, feeling humbled by its vastness. I stood in the misty spray of Niagara Falls, letting the thundering water wash away lingering bitterness. I watched the sun rise over the rocky coast of Maine, appreciating the beginning of a day in ways I never had before. Between travels, I started attending a cancer support group initially as a participant seeking help, then increasingly as someone offering guidance to newly diagnosed patients. Many were dealing with relationship challenges similar to what I had experienced. I found unexpected purpose in helping them navigate both the medical and emotional aspects of their journeys. 5 months into my treatment, Dr. Patel called with news that left me speechless. The experimental immunotherapy was showing remarkable results in my case. My tumors had reduced significantly in size, and certain markers in my blood work indicated positive response beyond what they had seen in most patients. She cautioned against false hope, but adjusted my prognosis upward. We were no longer talking about months, but potentially a year or more. Word of my improved prognosis somehow reached Amanda. She appeared at my apartment unannounced, claiming she had been doing soul-searching and realized the depth of her mistakes. With tears and promises of changed behavior, she suggested reconciliation painting, a picture of us rebuilding our relationship during my extended time. Her transparent attempt to reposition herself in my life now that I might live longer disgusted me more than her original betrayal. I established firm boundaries, making it clear that our relationship was over in every sense. The divorce was final, and no change in my medical condition would alter that fact. Her desperation increased when she learned that Jake had left the state, moving to Arizona to escape the consequences of his actions and start over where his reputation had not preceded him. The aftermath for both betrayers was exactly what they deserved. Their relationship had crumbled under the pressure of public exposure and mutual blame. Jake's professional misconduct investigation had resulted in him being barred from financial advising in Massachusetts, while Amanda's real estate license was under review, following complaints about ethical violations separate from our personal situation. She had apparently cut corners in several property transactions, misrepresenting facts to close deals. Amanda was forced to sell her luxury car and designer wardrobe to cover legal expenses and mounting debt. The apartment she moved to after leaving our home was in a neighborhood she would have previously considered beneath her standards. Jake had abandoned her, completely blocking her number after she repeatedly called him for financial help. My own healing progressed on multiple fronts. Physically, I continued to respond well to treatment, though I harbored no illusions about a complete cure. Emotionally, I found myself capable of joy again, particularly in simple pleasures I had once overlooked. My relationship with my sister Lauren and nephew Troy deepened as I spent time teaching Troy about fishing astronomy and financial principles appropriate for an 8-year-old. The connection with Sophia evolved naturally, neither of us pushing or defining what was happening. We enjoyed each other's company, supported each other through difficult days, and gradually acknowledged the feelings developing between us. She understood better than anyone the uncertainty of my situation and never asked for promises I could not make. Instead, we agreed to appreciate each day as it came, finding meaning in the present rather than fixating on an unpredictable future. By the 1-year mark from my diagnosis, the outer limit of my original prognosis, I had defied the statistics. Though still classified as terminal, my condition had stabilized enough that we now discussed my future in terms of years rather than months. I rebuilt connections with friends who had distanced themselves after my diagnosis, forgiving their discomfort with mortality that had made them absent when I needed support. The final legal proceedings ended with my complete vindication. The court recognized Amanda's financial misconduct and awarded me damages beyond what my attorney had initially sought. I donated the entire amount to pancreatic cancer research, finding satisfaction not in the money but in transforming her betrayal into something that might help future patients. Through everything, the medical treatments, legal battles, emotional processing, I discovered a profound truth about life that I might never have understood otherwise. We cannot control how much time we have, but we absolutely can control how we use that time and who we spend it with. The clarity that comes from facing mortality stripped away everything superficial and revealed what truly matters: loyalty, integrity, compassion, and authenticity. I no longer feel anger when I think of Amanda and Jake. They live with the consequences of their choices, diminished versions of themselves, having lost not just material comforts, but self-respect and the trust of everyone who once believed in them. Their punishment continues daily, self-administered through the lives they now lead. As for me, I live each day with purpose and gratitude. The experimental treatment continues to show promise, with researchers documenting my case for potential breakthroughs that might help others. Sophia and I take nothing for granted, cherishing our connection while acknowledging its fragility. My nephew Troy trust fund grows, ensuring his education regardless of what happens to me. My relationships with family and true friends have deepened beyond what I thought possible. Perhaps most surprisingly, I feel a sense of peace I never experienced before my diagnosis. There is clarity in knowing what matters, in recognizing true loyalty, in living authentically. The tragedy that began with a terminal diagnosis and devastating betrayal transformed into an unexpected gift, the opportunity to recognize the difference between what I thought was important and what actually is. Do you think you would have the strength to rebuild your life after such betrayal? Have you ever had to start over when everything you believed in crumbled? Comment below and share your story. If this journey of justice and healing resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button to follow more stories of overcoming life's toughest challenges. Remember, sometimes the things meant to break us become the foundation for something stronger than we ever imagined. Thank you for listening, and may you never take a single day for granted.